everybody, and welcome to a very special board game review and gameplay demo. The reason that this particular one is special is because this is actually a request, in this case from Revenant77X. That's right, today we are talking all things Munchkin. Not only that, but I personally decided to make it even bigger. In addition to talking about Munchkin, this game, the card game, I will also be talking about Munchkin Quest, the board game, because not only do I happen to have both, but I actually really enjoy both of them as well. The really cool thing about Munchkin, I've talked about it several times, especially in my recent videos where I talked about games you shouldn't play with your mom, and games that just need to calm down a little bit, but essentially Munchkin is a really fun fantasy game where the entire point is that the whole game is just satire on gaming in general. The idea is that it's full of random jokes that most people probably wouldn't understand unless they're actually in the gaming world. If you know games, if you know especially things like D&D and stuff like that, there's a lot of jokes, but the long and short of it is that it is an adventure game where you're going in trying to kill monsters and level up to level 10. After you level up to level 10, then you win. The problem is that all of your friends are out to get you as well. They want to stab you, they want to kill you, and they want to take all of your shiny stuff. As you go through, you'll earn new things, you'll get treasure, you'll get new swords and axes and shields and all sorts of crazy stuff, and also boots and headgear and whatnots. Very fun, lots of really cool random stuff, lots of random bad guys, but the biggest thing for Munchkin is just the humor. Overall, it is a wonderful game though. It plays a lot of people, and if you really want to, you can actually expand it out to play more people. I think the actual number of people is 3 to 6, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, the actual number is 3 to 6. On the board game, I believe it's more than that. It's 2 to 4. But either way, I have actually played Munchkin with 7 people or even 8 people, and it does work, but it's very boring. It becomes exceedingly tiresome, and it really begins to really get drawn out and relatively painful. But either way, lots of players, lots of fun, crazy wackiness, great games overall. The first thing that I'm going to do is talk about what they're similar to. Talking about what these games are similar to is actually one of the reasons why I decided to expand a little bit and talk about Munchkin Quest as well. The reason that I did that is because the games are similar to one another. And that's pretty much it. I mean, we've got a completely card-based game, and then we have a board game that does the exact same types of mechanics. But in this case, you're actually going and actually exploring a dungeon where you get to go into different rooms and all that kind of stuff. Whereas in the Munchkin card game, you are just going into the room. And it's completely arbitrary. It's like playing D&D without miniatures, which is very common. But your DM is telling you you enter a room and they're telling you what's inside. Okay, that's this Munchkin, but playing Munchkin Quest is more like playing D&D with miniatures, if that makes any sense to you guys. But either way, these games very similar to one another. The biggest problem with them is that they are primarily here for the humor. So there's not really a lot of games that are very similar to that, except other Steve Jackson games. I mean, you've got to, if you're talking about the humor aspect itself, you would talk about things like Illuminati, or Shay Geek, or, I mean, maybe not Zombie Dice, but, you know, something like Bang is pretty fun. That's just a big wacky party game. But either way, there are not really a whole lot of games that do the dungeon exploration thing quite the same. With Munchkin Quest, since it is tile exploration, you have a lot of games like the D&D games, the Legend of Driz. You've got the, what is it, Wrath of Astalon, something like that. I don't remember the dragon's name. And then you have Castle Ravenloft, where you actually have the tile exploration. You've got Mage Knight does tile exploration. You've got Descent, I believe that does tile exploration as well. All sorts of stuff. Tile exploration is really big. But again, these are both meant to be somewhat light and relatively quick, at least compared to some of those other ones. And again, the biggest thing is just the humor. So really, these two games, very similar to one another. But now, the most important part, I'm going to jump right in. I'm going to do gameplay demos, and I'm actually going to do it for both of these. I'm going to start off with the basic Munchkin. I'm only going to be using the base set. I'm not going to be using like a Star Munchkin or Munchkin Fu or any of those things. They all work the same. But I'll do that first, and then after that I will do Munchkin Quest afterwards. So either way, I hope that you enjoy it. everybody, we are here and we are ready to play Munchkin. So this is the first half of my gameplay demo where I'm going to be talking about the card game. After this, I'm going to be talking about Munchkin Quest. For this particular one, I am using just the base game, and not only that, but I am not using the deluxe version. In other words, I am not using the one that has the board, but I'll talk about that in just a little bit. This is a very, very simple game to set up. We've got two piles of cards. We've got treasures and we've got doors, and the end point of this game is to reach level 10. Everybody starts off as, quote, a level 1 human without any class. Hee hee. Actually, I think it says heh heh. There we go, heh heh. So one thing about this particular version of the game is that it has no way of keeping track of what level you are. So what I did is I just took my Munchkin box and I stuck a bunch of D10s in it just to keep track of it. Now there are actually official Munchkin D10s that actually go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 just around the top, and then the bottom is 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, as opposed to the regular way that a D10 is designed with the number orientation. But these work just fine for my purposes. You also have the Munchkin level counting app, which gives you a bunch of different stuff that you can do. There's all sorts of different ways you can use the Munchkin Deluxe version, which has the board and the little figurines, however you want to do it, but I just use my basic D10s because I don't want to shell out for the official Munchkin ones. And also, if I don't like you, I'll just give you a D8 and see if you notice. Now, that said, as I mentioned, I'm only playing with the base game. I'm not using any of the expansions, even though I've got all of my Munchkin cards over there. But I will be talking later on a little bit about how you can combine them and all that kind of stuff. But the basic setup, we've got our doors, we've got our treasures, we've got a D6, which is for running away. We have some means of counting levels, whatever it happens to be. And at the beginning of the game, everybody starts off with 4 of each card type, which are the treasures and the doors. So essentially, the treasures are exactly what they sound like. Those are the cards that you get from defeating monsters. It has all the shiny stuff that you can use to throw at bad guys, as well as at your fellow players, all sorts of stuff like that. Whereas the doors, these are things like the monsters, the ways that the monsters can be worse, races and classes, and all sorts of crazy stuff like that. But essentially, this game is, you could argue semi-cooperative because you can help each other out, but you can also severely hurt each other as well. At the beginning, what everybody's going to do is look through their cards and see what they've got. So you can see here for my doors, I've got a Cleric, which is a class. I've got Wizard, which is a class. I've got Humongous, which is a monster enhancer that I can play on preferably somebody else. That will add plus 10 to monster. I'll get into combat earlier. And then Curse, lose 2 cards. Oh no! First, the player to the victim's left draws a card from the victim's hand and keeps it. Then the player on the right does the same. So since this is in my hand, I can actually play it on another character whenever I want. Whenever I feel like being a total D-bag. So then for my treasures here, I've got pretty balloons used during a combat, and you can give plus to either side. I have a really impressive title, which is a +3 bonus. It doesn't have anything here. One important thing to note with the treasures, since you are a regular human with no class, you have 2 arms, you have feet, you have a single head, and you have a single body, for the purpose of equipping different things. And look, 1,000 gold pieces go up a level, also known as a gwal in this game. That's a pretty nice thing. And look, it's a bandana. Usable by human only, which I am, so that's pretty cool. But you notice there, it is headgear. Since I only have 1 head, I can only have 1 headgear. So, what I'm going to do here, I'm going to equip my really impressive title. I'm also going to equip my bandana. I'm going to go ahead and use my gwal. I'm going to go up a level, so I am now level 2 before we have even started the game. And then I'm going to tap the pretty balloons. If you're familiar with Magic the Gathering, then essentially this is an item that is on the table that I can use whenever I want, but I don't have to use it, and I don't have it technically equipped. But basically the biggest thing for these, I could keep this in my hand and then use it whenever I want it out of my hand, but you have a hand limit of 4. So it's not so great. Now I'm actually going to go ahead and use the wizard here. Each of the classes has various powers that I'll talk about. I mean, whenever they come up. For example, charm spell, you can discard your whole hand, minimum of 3 cards, to charm a single monster instead of fighting it. Discard the monster and take its treasure, but you don't gain levels, which is pretty amazing. So I am now a wizard with a bandana, a really impressive title, and some pretty balloons ready to go if I ever need them. Okay? So we'll go over to this guy here. He has some pretty cool stuff. Oh, here we go. Swiss Army Polearm, a +4. Usable by human only. So here's an interesting case. So +4 bonus, the bow with ribbons. First and foremost, you see it takes 2 hands to equip. In other words, you wouldn't be able to use another item in your hands if you have this. And it's usable by the elf only. Since it's only usable by an elf and we are humans, we'll just put it on the table like that. It's in our backpack, quote unquote. The other thing here for the Swiss Army Polearm, you see that also has 2 hands and it's big. The big connotation means exactly what it sounds like. It is a large item and you can only have 1 big item at any given time equipped. Okay? Last but not least, we have usable by wizard only, the Staff of Napalm, which looks pretty awesome. +5, but sadly I am not a wizard. Let's see if we got a wizard here. No, unfortunately. But what we do have, we have a halfling here. So the halfling is pretty cool. They can do some cool stuff, and that is a race, which is distinct from class. You have class and race. There we have a monster card. I'll get to what you can do with monsters if they're in your hand a little bit later on. A curse for another player to make them lose a level. Ancient, really old monster, so it gets a +10, and you get extra treasures if you end up defeating it. So this person is going to curse me because I was so bold as to go up to level 2 before the game even started. So now I'm back to level 1. And I'll just go through these other 2 people really briefly here. Let's see, leather armor, steel level, that's pretty good. And sandals of protection, that helps against bad things over there. Okay, and nothing really helpful in the door cards there. Now let's try this person. +1 bonus hireling, this is kind of cool. So this allows you to carry and use 1 extra item even if you could not otherwise. If you lose your hireling, the item goes 2. So that is very, very useful and by itself gives you a bonus. So this is awesome. The Helmet of Courage with the +1 bonus for headgear. Yeah, you remember I mentioned that a lot of this game is all about humor. So yeah, it's pretty awesome. It's pretty hilarious. Let's see. The stoned golem, the king tut, the gazebo, and a warrior class. The warrior is pretty awesome. So for the warrior, you can discard up to 3 cards, and each one gives you a +1 bonus, and you win ties. Normally monsters win ties, so I'll be a warrior there. And then we'll put down the cheese grater of peace, which you use to smack monsters around. Good choice there. All right. So we're ready to go. The way that you decide the first player is technically you roll a dice, you roll a die, and then you argue about the results, argue about what everything means in any context, and then eventually somebody goes first. Now, on a most basic level, this game is about the combat. We are trying to fight monsters because monsters will give us levels. And remember, we want to get to level 10. The only way to get to level 10 is by defeating a monster. Earlier I played a Gwal, so I was able to go up to level 2. You can't do that at level 9, so that you can just go up to 10 and be like, woo, I won! But there are several other things that you can do. For example, an elf, their racial power is if they're helping somebody else out, then they actually get a level as well if they win. Alright, so we'll just jump right in. The first thing that you do is what we call kick open the door. What you do is you take a door card and you flip it face up. Oh shoot, I got a bullrog. That is very unpleasant. The nice thing though is that it will not pursue anyone of level 4 or below, and the bad stuff is you are flayed to death. In other words, if you fail to run away, you die. Death is actually not really a big deal though, but if you defeat him you get 5 treasures and 2 levels. So essentially my combat bonus right now, with my really impressive title and my bandana, is 6 plus my level, which would be a total of 7. 7 versus 18 is not going to happen. So I'm just going to let it leave me alone. Okay? And that's it. That's the end of my turn. That's the end of this player's turn right here. So we'll move on to this player. Kick open the door. Truly obnoxious curse. Lose the item that gives you the biggest bonus. Oh, that's a shame. Just lost the Swiss Army Polearm. Well, that's not fun. Now, because this person did not run into a monster, they are allowed to do what we call loot the room, which means they can take a door card into their hand face down. And what is it? Okay. So they got something that they'll be able to use on somebody else. Next up is this player right here. Level 1 crabs. So Currently, this person has a combat bonus of 2. They've got leather armor, which gives them a +1, and they have a 1 level. So they are winning. They are winning level 1 to 2. And that's pretty much it. Now the idea is that we ask, does anybody care? Does anybody want to stop them? So this is the time where we might play something like humongous. This would turn those crabs into humongous crabs, and they would be level 11 instead of level 1. So this is the time where something like that might be good, but we'll let it go for now. So they win. They get 1 treasure. In this case, it'll be a face-down treasure. They will gain a level. So this person is now level 2. They get a face-down treasure, but I have to look at it. Here we go. They got a huge rock. Aw, yeah. That is a solid treasure right there. Literally, it's a rock. It's very solid. Next, this player is up. Kick down the door. Warrior. Well, that doesn't really help too much. They got their class, though. Now, since they didn't run into a monster, the other option that they have is they can do what's called look for trouble. In other words, if they've got monsters in their hand, these things that say have a level at the top, they are allowed to go ahead and say, well, I'm going to try to fight this guy. So the easiest way to go about this, since this person right now has the Helm of Courage, the Hireling, and a single level, which is a little bit unfortunate, what they can do is they'll say, well, I have a level 8 monster. Will anybody be willing to help me? And then this person right here will say, yes, I will gladly help you. So they look for trouble, and they found a gazebo. The gazebo is level 8, so that is 1, 2, 3 to 8. This person right here said, well, that's worth 2 treasures. Here is how this is where a lot of negotiation takes place in terms of how you're going to help, what you're going to do, and what you're willing to give up. Because this person who sought out the gazebo is not able to beat them on their own. What they need to do is they need to get help, but you have to negotiate your price. So for example, this person right here, they'll say, well, I'll help you out. I have a bonus of 7 just by myself, and I'll help you out for 1 treasure that I pick first. Right? That's the kind of thing that you can negotiate with. I could even say I'll do it for both treasures, but that's a terrible, terrible thing to say. This person over here has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so it would still be a win. And they say, well, I'll do it, but I'll do it for a single treasure, and you get to pick yours first. So this person is like, oh, well, that's pretty awesome. That's awesome. This person is now helping, because this guy right here who is fighting these gazebo will get to pick their treasure first, which is a huge advantage potentially. Alright, so that means that they're at +1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 to 8 for the gazebo, and they're thinking, do we want to do this? Do we want to use the humongous? Do we want to use ancient so that we can just throw these guys off? Nah, we'll let them have it. So the gazebo is defeated. The person who was playing there gets their 2. And now, let's see here. They get 1 treasure card, 2 treasure cards. Unfortunately, both of these are relatively worthless to each player, because you see this one is usable by halfling only, this one is usable by dwarf only. They're both decent items, but unfortunately neither one can use it right now. So this person, since they're picking first, they're going to take the short wide armor, even though they can't use it yet, and this person is going to take the step ladder. Did they have it? No. Somebody had halfling in there somewhere. Alright? So that's the basics of the combat system. You add up all of the bonuses from your treasures and then also your level, and once you have that totaled, then that is your combat power against the bad guys, whoever you happen to be facing. Next, this guy's turn again. Curse! Malign Mirror. You are cursed if in your next fight you do not get any bonuses from items other than armor. A wishing ring used before the next fight will lift the curse. That is a terrible, terrible curse, because that means that this person is now only at a level 1. And this is the time where it would be good to essentially purposely lose a fight, but unfortunately we don't have a monster, so we can't look for trouble. So we'll just loot the room, we get a face down card. Alright, this is kind of a cool card, Super Munchkin. There's two cards similar to this. There is Super Munchkin and then there's the Half-Breed. Essentially what they do is they let you have two either classes or races respectively. In this case, the Super Munchkin is you can have two class cards and you have all the advantages and all the disadvantages of each. Or you can have a single class card and you get all the advantages but none of the disadvantages. So we will use that for Wizard. I am now a Super Munchkin Wizard and I don't have any disadvantages. So some of the disadvantages are things like certain monsters will have a higher attack against specific classes and or races and things of that nature. Or you can have things that say like not usable by a specific species or not usable by a specific class for different treasures and things of that nature. But overall, that's pretty much the game flow. There is a lot of push and pull and take and give and take and all that kind of stuff. Initially, especially if you get some bad treasure cards, it can be exceedingly difficult to really get off the ground because there aren't a lot of low-level monsters. And so like for this character right here, having 6 right off the bat and plus the level bonus is huge. That is enormous. And then, of course, the malign mirror is very unpleasant for that. But having things that you're not able to use right away can be very, very frustrating. Having things that you either don't want to use or shouldn't use or whatever it is, or that just don't help you for whatever reason, are absolutely terrible. But that's pretty much it. I'll just read through these really quickly. One thing that I didn't mention was using different treasures. So, for example, my pretty balloons here. So what I'll do, I'll look for a low level thing here. So here we go. The harpies. The nasty little dudes playing the harps. So see, they resist magic, so they have +5 against wizards. Oh, well, it just so happens I am a Super Munchkin Wizard, so I have no disadvantages. In other words, that does not affect me, even though I'm technically a wizard. Now the problem is they're level 4, I'm level 1 because of this stupid curse. But I've got my pretty balloons, so used during any combat for distraction, +5 to either side. I will use it on my side, and now I have a 6 to a 4. Nobody messes with me. I defeat the harpies, the curse goes away, and I get 2 treasures face down because I did it by myself. Because I'm awesome. The Rapier of Unfairness. And a magic lamp. You may use the magic lamp only on your turn. It summons a genie and makes a single monster vanish, which is actually pretty awesome. Okay, so lots of little stuff like that. That's, like I said, that's the general flow of the game. That's generally how it works. I covered the vast majority of the rules. These are available online if you want to look at the rules. But items, you can use them at any time for any purpose. You don't have to use them on yourself. You can use them on somebody else. For example, let's say that my character right here was level 3, and if you remember, the very first card that I drew here was the Bullrog. So actually, here, let's do this instead. So I'm level 4, and let's say we draw the Bullrog. They ignore somebody who's level 4 or below, but then let's say that somebody else, I don't know if anybody actually has one, I don't think they do. So I'll just dig through and find one here. Just find a wall. There, see, we boil an anthill to go up a level. Let's say that this player right here has that particular card. Well, this person is fighting the Bullrog, but they're level 4, so it's okay. They're like, I'm not going to fight it. I know I can't beat it. Oh, yeah? Well, go up a level, good sir. Now you're level 5. Hooray! Oh, no, but now the Bullrog is going to attack you. Oh, man, that sucks. You know, stuff like that. That is the essence of Munchkin. That is the type of mentality that you need to go into this game with, is just being able to completely mess with all of your best friends in the entire world. It's a ton of fun. It's a great game. So using this same scenario, I'm going to talk about running away and how that works. If you're fighting something and you know that you cannot beat it, then you need to run away. And that's where the 6-sided die comes in. In my case, I'm a wizard. You can discard up to 3 cards after rolling the die to run away, and each one gives you a +1. In order to run away, then you need to roll at least a 5 or better. So in other words, you have about a 1 in 3 chance of doing it successfully. So we'll go ahead and roll. I'll see if I run away. I rolled a 5. Hooray! That means that I did it successfully. I ran away from the Bullrog, so he just gets discarded and nothing happens. If I had rolled, say, a 1, then even if I discard 3 cards, I can't get up to a 5. I would only be at a 4. So then the bad stuff happens. Whatever the bad stuff is, that means you don't successfully run away. So in the case of the Bullrog, you are flayed to death. And when you die, all of your items get discarded, all of your cards get discarded, you go back to level 1, and you literally restart from the beginning. One interesting thing is that you can actually kill yourself if you want to. You can literally say, I'm dead, and then you restart from the beginning. It's potentially a good thing if you're in a pickle like this guy is, where there's literally no items that they can use. They don't have any cards that can help them. They won't be able to use either of the items that they've got. I mean, just all sorts of stuff like that. They're in big trouble, effectively. So they might say, I'm dead, never mind, whatevs, no worries. But that's pretty much it. The biggest thing is when you get into combat and having things like the humongous, so you could have the humongous Bullrog, you could have a humongous potted plant, you know, all that kind of stuff. And it just does exactly what it says. For example, if you use humongous on the Bullrog, it would become a 28 instead of an 18. And it would add, I believe it's 2 treasures, so it would be a total of 7. And that makes for some really fun negotiations. But other than that, like I said, that's pretty much it. Those are the basics of the game. There's not too much else. Everything else, it's basically just read whatever it says on the cards. Different races and classes do different things. I know I didn't go over all of them, but there are a decent number. The expansions add more and more and more. So they're like the cleric is kind of cool. When it's time for you to draw cards face up, you can instead take some of them from the top of the discard pile, which is very, very powerful potentially. Just a bunch of random, weird, crazy stuff. Here's a fun one: baby, -5 to monster instead of adding. You know, just crazy stuff like this. Oh, here. Last thing I promise. The cheat card, one of my favorites, one of my favorite doors. Play this card with an item card you have to play, and then you play it with an item from your hand. This item is legal to you even if it otherwise would not be. So this is where you could use multiple big items. You could use, for example, the bow with ribbons, even if you are not an elf. You would say, I'm cheating this. And then technically you don't have it equipped because it's being cheated. You know, just stuff like that. It's Munchkin. There's really no other really good way to explain it. It's just all kinds of wacky, weird Munchkin stuff. So essentially, just the flow of the game is you kick down the door, don't find a monster, then you can loot the room or you can look for trouble. If you find a monster, you enter into combat. And once you're in combat, then you can do whatever you need to. You can actually discard your class and or race while you're in combat if it serves a purpose, if you so desire, or you can just do it for fun, whatever you want to do. Let me think. You ask for help from your fellow members. Only one person can help you in a combat, and the negotiations have to take place beforehand, and you have to stick with whatever you agree with. So if you agree with, you get the first face-up treasure and I get everything else, or whatever it happens to be, then you have to stick with that. But either way, all of the Munchkins work the same kind of way. You can see here, there's got a thing on the back of the rules that's a supersized Munchkin, and that includes things like combining the different sets, where I've got a whole bunch of them. You also have just plain expansions. So for example, here in my big box of treasures, then you can see that symbol at the bottom, for example, represents the Unnatural Axe, which was the first expansion for this Munchkin game, the original Munchkin game, I should say. And then, like there, see, there's the little bow and arrow. That's deranged. I know, right? It's funny. So, you know, just stuff like that. That's how you recognize if they're from different sets. And you can also do what's called Epic Munchkin, which goes up to level 20. And I happen to have the rules for Epic Munchkin printed out here. I'll put a link for all this stuff in the description so that you guys can check it out. All the rules are on Steve Jackson Games. But these are kind of cool. They give different abilities. They give you feats for the different races. And it also changes the rules for knocking down doors once you're beyond level 10. But other than that, that's it. I'm going to go ahead right now and start talking about Munchkin Quest, the board game version of all of this, which is actually going to seem very, very similar. But either way, I hope that you enjoy it. Alright everybody, we are here and we are set up to play Munchkin Quest now, which is the second part of our little gameplay demo here for Munchkin. So what I'm going to be doing primarily is going over the main differences between regular Munchkin, the card one, and also and this one, the board game version. So first and foremost, the goal is the same. We are trying to get to level 10, but you can see this time we have these fancy little dials that allow us to keep track of our levels. But as before, everybody starts off as a level 1 human with no class whatsoever. In this one, we also have health markers. We got these little hearts. Everybody starts with 4 health markers. Everybody starts with 3 feet. These represent the movement, the actions, effectively, that we can take. You start with 300 gold, which are actually these little things right here. Everybody gets 2 dice, 2 6-sided dice that are color coordinated to their player, and then we also get 3 standees, these little things right here. As before, we do start with cards, but this time we actually have 3 different variations of cards. Over here, you can see our stacks. Actually, I don't know how well. Yeah. So we've got Deus Ex Munchkin, also known as the DXM card. We've got the treasure cards, and we've got monster cards. So effectively, the DXM cards are the doors without the monsters, because the monsters are now in the regular monster deck. Okay. So there's a few other things. We've got all of our stuff, all of our loot piled out over here. We've got this unique color coordinated die right here. We also have a D10 that we'll be able to use throughout. And I will note right now that I do have one of the expansions. I've got Looking for Trouble, which adds it adds 2 additional players. It also adds new cards of different types and all that sorts of thing. But the basic premise is the same. We start off with a total of 6 cards in this case. We start off with 3 DXM cards and 3 treasure cards. And we can see we've got similar things. So we've got Dispel Monster, which means they go away. We've got the Half-Breed, and right here I actually have the Dwarf. So the Dwarf here, you get an extra health marker, and then you discard a red health marker to stop being a dwarf, and I can pass through hidden doors as though they are regular doors, and I can carry as many big items as I want. So I will be a half-breed dwarf. And one of the other important things is we now have different types of treasures as well. So I'm going to start off with this sword here. It's actually versatile. You can use it 1- or 2-handed, depending on your needs at the time. So I'll equip that, and then you see you've got +2 bonus to an item. You actually equip this onto a specific item so it becomes awesome. So in this case, I now have an awesome sneaky sword. And the total bonus for that now is either 4 or 5, depending on if I'm using it 1- or 2-handed. So there's some cool little stuff like that. I'm only going to play as the red player. This time I'm not going to play as everybody else because it'll take too long. But effectively, Munchkin Quest, like I said, is very, very similar to regular Munchkin, but instead we have an actual section that we will be exploring. This is a dungeon delve game. So we got to go in and we've just got to explore some tiles. So effectively, the way that your turn works is you start off by drawing a DXM card. You start off by drawing one of the Deus Ex Munchkin cards, and you get it face down. So this actually goes into my hand, which is nice because it's a curse. And in this case, the victim loses a move token immediately, and you don't get it back until the curse is removed, which is really bad. Also, I'm a dwarf, so I get an additional health, so I now have 5 health instead of just 4. So after you draw your DXM, you move. The way that you move are with these little green feet. You start off with all 3 of them with the green side up. In order to move into a room, it costs a single point of movement. So you flip one over to red and you move into a room. So I'm going to move into this room right here. We've got this big bag of rooms. They are double-sided, so you pick which side as well as which room. And I have the padded cell. No weapons may be used in this room. Well, that really sucks. That is very unpleasant. Now, you can see here that it's got this little symbol at the top, that little red symbol with the sword. That indicates the warrior. So on the side here with all the different icons, then you can, here, let me scoot it down just a little bit. Then you can see it's all the different classes that you've got. And you also have male and female if you have the expansion as well. So we'll put down the padded cell just like that. And then we need linkers. So we'll have an open passageway, and last but not least, an invisible door. Da, 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 da. So the first thing that you do when you move into a room is you see if there's anything that you need to do. In this case, there isn't anything that I can do because it's just a regular room. It doesn't give me any bonuses or anything like that, but it means that I can't use my sword. So the first thing you do, you flip over a monster card once you have explored a room. After you flip over the monster card, then the first thing that you do is you roll for ownership. That's what this die here is for. We roll it, and we got green. We are playing with green, so that means that the green standee is put onto the orcs. So you just got to find the individual orc thing. Let's see if I can find it here. Doesn't really say what it is. So this can be the tough part, is trying to find whatever it is that you're looking for. Where are they? They're not a big thing, are they? I didn't think so. Well, there they are. All right. So you see it's got the little level 4 on it, and it's got the picture of the orcs. So now we actually have a physical representation of the monsters. That's how this game works. The monsters actually stick around if you don't defeat them. They just sort of hang out instead. So right now we've got the orcs, and I'll go ahead and get this person ready to see if they can help me, see if anybody can help me, just for the purpose of going through that. Here we go. The telescope and the horny helmet. Okay. All right. So, unfortunately, my weapon is worthless against this, so I'm currently at a 1 versus a 4. Here's the thing, though. There's a couple of differences in combat here. First off, you can still ask for help. The problem is the person has to be adjacent to you in order to help you out. Thankfully, Orange is adjacent to me, so they would be able to help me out if they were willing to do so. But as always, we have to negotiate a little bit. You can see down here it says that you get 2 treasures, so we can do the same kind of negotiation. I'll say, I'll give you one of the treasures, and you get second pick. They say, no, I want first pick. And I'm like, fine, you can have first pick. So then they move in. Now that they are in the room with me, they are helping me, and they have to stay there. They have to help me. So collectively, so they've got a telescope, which is technically an item, so that or it's a weapon, so it doesn't really help in the padded cell room. But they also have the horny helmet, which will help us out a little bit at least. So it's 2, 3 versus 4. Now it seems like we're still losing, but here's the major difference. In this game, you also roll as part of combat. The way that the dice rolling works is that the person who started the combat will roll their dice, and somebody will roll for the monster. So you see how there's the little die symbol at the bottom? That just indicates how many dice these orcs will roll. In this case, it's just 1. So for this, the Munchkin rolls the dice. Yeah. And that essentially indicates the end of people messing with you, because you still have things like the humongous and the baby and all that kind of stuff. So I'll go ahead and roll. The green die will be for the orcs, and the red die will be for me. And we'll see if we win. We tied! So it's 4 plus 5 is 9 versus 6, 7, 8, 9. So 9 to 9, we unfortunately lost. We lost against the 3,879 orcs, which is very, very sad. Now, just like before with the other game, oh shoot, see, I forgot about that too. These guys are actually +3 against dwarves, but thankfully since I'm a half-breed, that doesn't affect me. I'm just half-dwarf. I'm sorry, man, I'm just half-dwarf, don't blame me. So effectively, what would have happened too if I was a warrior, that would mean I would have lost my die roll. Remember this little symbol right here. If it's red, that means that you lose a die roll. If it's green, that means that you have one more, you have an additional die. So now we do the same thing. We have to roll in order to escape from the 3,879 orcs. And it works just like it does in regular Munchkin. You have to roll a 5 or better. But first, we have to injure ourselves. We both took a hit because we failed to defeat the orcs. So first I'll roll for myself. I got a 6. I successfully ran away back to the entrance. And now it's Orange's turn. They did not successfully run away. So the bad stuff is lose any combination of hits and levels that adds up to 3. Well, that's bad because they can't go to level 0. So that means that Orange is now dead. 1, 2, 3. This is actually kind of serendipitous because I can show you what happens. Unlike in Card Munchkin, where in the Card Munchkin all of your stuff just gets discarded, what happens here is anything that you have equipped is dropped, as well as any money that you still have. So what we do, we put it in a little pile like that, and then we take these markers here that just have the big giant letters on them, and there's 2 that correspond to each one. So we'll put that over there with an A on it, and then we'll put that there with an A on it to indicate that that's where the stuff was dropped. If you want, you can go back into that room and you can use a single movement power to pick that stuff back up. So hopefully he'll be trying to get it again, but then all of these cards get discarded because he wasn't using them at all. But then they get a new Munchkin at the entrance. And now it's back to red again because that was just my first movement. So we'll move again. We'll move into this room now. Hopefully we'll get something a little bit better here. Oof. All right, the laboratory. This actually has a deal with it, which is kind of cool. And in this case, there is a green wizard hat, so wizards roll 2 dice, and in my case, dwarves, unfortunately, don't get to roll any dice, but since I'm a half-breed, I ignore disadvantages of being a dwarf. So you can see why this game can take a very, very long time. Because remember, this is still the very first turn with a single person. Right? Okay, we roll, or we draw a new thing. The Poison Ivy Kutsu Fly Trap. Very, very unpleasant. Very nasty little guy. Level 10, unpleasant. But now, all of my awesome sword is working. So that's very, very helpful. First thing we do, we gotta find this guy. We gotta roll. See who gets it. Yellow gets it. So yellow gets a DXM, and we get a standee for the fly trap. Hopefully I'll be able to defeat this one. I doubt anybody's going to want to help me. This guy is dead, so he's definitely not going to be able to help me. So I'm using my sword two-handed, so I've got 3, 4, 5, 6 to 10, which is not a very pleasant place to be in. It's 6 to 10, and the fly trap is rolling 1 die, and I'm also rolling 1 die. So that's not very good. I'm going to see if anybody else can help me, if anyone's willing to help me out here. Let's take a look. Doesn't seem like it, unfortunately. It's very sad. Very, very sad. Not so good here. Yeah, nobody wants to help me. Nobody really can help me. This guy can help one. So this potion right here, the Potion of Strength, says that it's a throwable magic potion. In other words, if you're adjacent to a room where a combat is taking place, you can literally toss this into it and help out either side. This guy's going to be ridiculously nice and help me out by throwing the Potion of Strength and giving me an additional +5, simply for the purposes of the demonstration, because they are not really able to help me. So that's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 to 10. So now it's just a straight up roll off. So you've got yellow die for the trap and red die for me. Anybody else care? Anybody care? No, 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 no. Yay! 6 to 1. I win. Huzzah! Da, 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 da. So the standee goes back. Fly trap goes back. And I get, what do I get? I get 3 treasures face down, which is pretty awesome. So there's 1 and 2 and 3. I go up a level. And let's see what I got. Ooh, barbecue fork. That's fun. So now both of my hands are filled because I got a barbecue fork and I got a sword. Very exciting. Very exciting. The raffle ticket. And the super healing potion. See, even if you're cut to little itty bitty bits, you can still use the super healing potion on yourself. Okay? So that was my second movement. And now for my third movement, I'm going to do something else that you're able to do in order to use your movement capabilities or your actions, technically. And that is to search a room. Searching a room lets you find all sorts of different stuff. And the way that it works is you roll the D10, and depending on what you get, different things happen. So you see one or less, you draw a monster card and start combat. You get some gold, you can get a treasure card, etc., etc. And depending on how you roll, it might become ransacked so that you have a -1 to any future searches, or it might become completely looted out where you're not able to search it all anymore. So I'm actually going to do that to see if I can find some decent items. So I'll roll the die here. I got a 4, and I don't have any pluses, so that means that I got 500 gold pieces, but nothing happens to the room itself. One thing that I forgot to mention in the previous section about the regular Munchkin card game is that at any time you can sell a total of 1,000 goods of some sort, 1,000 money, and you can go up a level that way. So in my case, I've got 500, 200, so that's 700, plus another 600, and then I've got 800 in gold. The problem is, if you do it with items, you can't get change. The nice thing about Munchkin Quest is you've got these little coins that you can get change for. But regardless, that's the end of my turn. So the room stays the same just like that. Now, the last thing, since the orcs are still around, and they're owned by Green over here, since the orcs are still around, the orcs actually move now. The monsters are capable of movement, and that's the last thing that occurs. The way that you do it is you just roll the colored dice again, or the colored die rather, and after you roll the die, then they move in that direction, technically. So let me see here, just to make certain. Yeah. And the other thing is, if the monster movement color matches a player color, they get a DXM. Red! So I get a DXM. Ooh, a mate. That one's nasty. That basically clones a monster. So somebody's fighting 2 instead of just 1. The way that monster movement works is they follow the arrows on these. So you see they've got the colored arrows. They've got green, blue, yellow, and red in this case. And the monsters move along those particular arrows as much as they can, at least. In this case, in the padded cell, we've got orange, purple, blue, and green. So this monster doesn't move. It wouldn't move anyway because it's just by itself. But once you get a really big thing, then the monsters will start moving along, and they just move along the arrows until they stop, until there are no more arrows of that color, or if they were going to go into a room that they had already been to. In addition, there's also these special monster movements here, where green just means that it's fast, so it moves an additional space in the same direction that it came in at the end. Red means that the monster is slow, so it only moves one room, even if it could keep going with the same color. Yellow means that the monster is lurking, and that means it just doesn't move at all, no matter what. Blue, it means that it's contrary, and that means that it moves backwards. It moves the other direction. And then a footprint with a question mark means that it has some special wackiness to its movement. So for example, on the Bullrog here, you can see it's got the little question mark there. So you just check its card and see the way that it moves. But effectively, that's a single turn there. What I'll do now is I'll go ahead and expand it out just a little bit so that you guys can see a little bit more and see more of how the monster movement works and all that kind of stuff. All right, so let's expand this out just a little bit. And again, the different rooms do different things. The deals that are listed in rooms, you can do for a single point of movement. You're allowed to use them for a single foot, essentially. Need some connectors here so that we can keep going. One thing that I forgot to mention on these linkers, the number on the link says how much movement it costs to move through it. So for example, we've got 1 for a regular door. If the door is invisible, then it costs 3 movement to get through. But for example, a wizard can go through invisible doors for 1 movement. And thieves can go through locked doors for 1 movement as well. Okay. There's a couple of caveats for monster movement. First off, monsters can never stop in the entrance. If they were, they would just move straight through it. Second, if a monster ends up in the room with the person that matches their stand color, they would stay there. That's essentially their attack target. And then the other major thing is that some of the monsters can go through the hidden and the non-hidden ones, and some of them can even go through walls as well, depending. But basically, some of them will like destroy doors in order to get through them and stuff like that. But just depends. All right. So there we go. One thing also to note is, in order to mess with somebody, you remember you can play all the different cards that mess with people, like the curses, for example. You can play those at any time, and you don't have to be adjacent to somebody. But for example, if I was in a combat with somebody, then it would have to be over here. And the problem is nobody would be able to help me because nobody is adjacent to me. Same thing over here. If orange were to move over here, yellow wouldn't be able to help or hurt them, technically. So initially, at least during this game, it's good if everybody sort of clusters together a little bit to try to help each other out, and then afterwards sort of start to spread out a little bit more from there. It's a much bigger help, and it means that everybody's going to be a lot better in the end, just sticking together early on and then spreading off later. So that's pretty much it. I can go over a couple of the nuances of some of the monster movement. So, for example, if let's say the gummy golem, this funny looking guy here, if they were in the room here with the yellow one and it happened to roll red, which is this arrow right here, then the gummy golem would go right there. And even if there was a red arrow there, it wouldn't go anywhere. It would just stay there. Another thing, if, for example, it rolled orange here, and let's say these were swapped. So if it rolled orange, then it loops back around to the other side of the dungeon here. And then it would keep going if it could, but in this case it can't. So, yeah, but you go in as long as the chain will permit you to. So, for example, rolling orange, the orcs here, they would go through the entrance, wrap back around here to the Hall of Fame, and then they would go whoosh, into this one right here. So they're a green standee, so they would still move, but this orange arrow right here is pointing back to the Hall of Fame, which means that the orcs don't move. You don't go back to some place that the monster went through in that turn. Okay? So like I said, that's pretty much it. The last little note is you do have to be level 10 in order to win. And what happens is after you get to level 10, so yay, look, I'm level 10, huzzah! Just like before, you have to kill a monster in order to get to level 10. And then you need to go to the entrance so that you can escape. In order to escape, you draw a monster card once you get to the entrance, and no matter what it is, that card is now level 20. So in this case, it would be a level 20 gazebo instead of a level 8 gazebo. And then you fight that monster, and if you win, then you win the game. If you fight it's called the boss monster, quote unquote. If you defeat the boss, then you win Munchkin Quest. And you can win with other players. You can get help with it, but more than likely people probably aren't going to want to help you, or they won't be adjacent to you, so they're not going to be able to anyway. So it doesn't really matter. But basically you want to make certain that you've got the gear, you want to make certain that obviously you'll have the level already, but that you're just sort of armed to the teeth and ready to go. But yeah, that's pretty much it. There's not much else to say about this. The only time the monsters will show up is when you explore a new room. After all of the rooms have been explored, for whatever reason you run out of stuff, then the monsters actually just show up when you enter into a room. but that has never happened when I've played this game. It is certainly possible though, and that's pretty much it. A lot of it is just read whatever it says and do what the card says. This game, again, is much, much longer than the regular Munchkin, the card-based one, but it is really, really fun. The rooms are absolutely ridiculous. They have some very, very cool effects. And also, the last thing to note, on the box here, they do have some very useful information. So here's the search table. They have some of the things regarding what to do if you have rules contradictions, as well as rules that cannot be changed whatsoever. They talk about the turn phases right here, and then they have advertisements for a bunch of stuff. There's the Munchkin level counter again that you can use with this. And then the Jumbo D6s, as well as the Portal Combat, which is one that I don't have, unfortunately. That's kind of cool because you've got teleporting, and that really helps out with being adjacent because it counts if you can toss a potion through a portal, which is really cool. But either way, that is Munchkin Quest. Really great game. It's a good iteration of Munchkin itself in the context of a board game and especially tile exploration. I think that it was done well. I think it makes sense for the context of Munchkin. I like the new stuff it added. Obviously much, much longer though, so you know, you can take it however you may. The biggest thing is you don't get a lot of the flavor of like the Star Munchkin or Cthulhu and things of that nature that you get with the card game. But either way, I will move right on ahead and I will talk about the pros and cons as well as general conclusions overall for the Munchkin games collectively. Last but certainly not least, I'm just going to go over some pros and cons for both of these games, or at least Munchkin collectively, and then I'm also going to just give my basic summary and conclusions. First and foremost, the pros. For me, the biggest pro is just the humor. I mentioned it a billion times throughout this video. The humor is absolutely amazing, but it's also a con. As I mentioned in particularly in the games that you shouldn't play with your mother video, if you don't get the humor, you probably won't like the game. Because that is a huge part of it. If you don't enjoy the humorous aspect for these games, then it's probably not going to be something that you're going to enjoy. It's not going to be something that you're going to be like, oh, woo, yay, let's play Munchkin, the game that I don't understand any of the references for. That's really the biggest thing. The second thing for me is I love the fact that at least the card game plays a ton of players. Granted, when you get into higher numbers, it's a little bit more difficult to keep it balanced and to keep it interesting for everybody else because you really run out of cards very quickly. But either way, it's still very, very fun, and you get it's a good game for a lot of players. Both of them relatively quick. The card game much, much faster compared to the board game. But that really can depend on how many people you're playing with and their experience level with the games. But I would say the biggest con for both of them is that while they are good games, there are other games that do similar things better. Again, because I know I keep saying it, but because the humor is really one of the biggest aspects to both of these, the game itself is relatively light. And both of these are fairly luck-based because you really need to get good treasure so that you can increase your capabilities. You really need to get relatively low-level monsters so that you're actually able to win. Either that or you need to be able to really get your friends to help you and all that kind of stuff. So that's probably the biggest con. That's also the biggest pro. Where you play it for fun. This is not a game that you're going to sit down and take seriously. If you do, you are playing it wrong. I will tell you that right now. Do not try to take Munchkin in any context seriously. It just is not a good idea. Just don't do it, right? But other than that, one of the other big pros is I really enjoy the table talk with these because a lot of it comes down to you have to save your cards for when you really need them, and it's like, okay, well, are we going to stop him? If we're going to stop him, we have to go all out and we have to stop him. You know, just things like that, and not only that, but the negotiation. I love negotiation. Negotiation is one of my favorite aspects of any game, and both of these do have negotiation, but it is a relatively light version of negotiation. And actually, on that note, one of the reasons why I like the card game a little bit more than the board game is that for the board game, you lose a decent amount of that interaction because you need to be adjacent to the other player. in order to like really do much to them or help them. And it kind of takes away a little bit of what made Munchkin Munchkin, because yes, you can still mess with them and screw everything up, but it's a lot harder to actually assist if you would like to assist. So that's why I would really generally take the card game over the board game, but the board game is a bit more of an immersive experience and a lot more it's more strategic, which I really, really like. And I like having the little monsters roaming around, which is kind of cool. Having the little standees just makes the game feel different from the card game, which is nice. It's not just carbon copied and slapped down to a board. But either way, one other thing to note, I do not have Munchkin Deluxe, which keeps track of the levels. So all I do is I actually just use the D10s that I was showing you earlier. You do have the official Munchkin D10s that actually have specific rules for them, and you can roll them and it gives you a bunch of different effects. But that's up to you entirely if you would like to do that. I think that they're both really fun. They're great games. I highly advise that just start with the base of Munchkin. It's very heavily D&D based, but definitely go for it if you want to. Or try out one of the many iterations for it, because there's things ranging from the zombies and werewolves with Munchkin Bites. You've got Munchkin Booty, which is pirates. You've got Star Munchkin, which is all sorts of Star Trek and Star Wars references. You've got Munchkin Impossible, which is a bunch of James Bond references. You can go on and on and on and on. And all of the references make sense in context. And the thing is, since they are standalone games, it makes it so that you can probably find a Munchkin game that makes sense for your fandom and something that you would like to see. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and get going. Thank you so much for watching. Revenant, thank you very much for the recommendation. I hope that you enjoyed my little review and my gameplay demo. I hope everybody else did as well. And if you have a particular game that you would like me to review, if you enjoyed this review, if you didn't, if you like Munchkin, if you hate it, whatever it happens to be, feel free to put any and all thoughts in the comments below. With that, thank you again very much, and I will see you next time. Thank you again for watching my review and gameplay demo for the Munchkin card and board games. I hope that you enjoyed it, and more importantly, I hope that this made you at least a little bit interested in trying out the game for yourself, because they are both very fun. As always, please feel free to put any and all thoughts in the comments below, including any games that you would like to see me review in the future. In addition, if you would like to see more of my videos, you can see several playlists linked up at the top of the page, and if you want to see more from me in the future, then please feel free to click that big giant subscribe button. And with that, thank you very much again, and I will see you next time.